Hey, Bryan Loritts here, and it's just a joy to have been asked to come alongside and encourage you in your journey in preaching. And want to be very careful to say that even though I've been preaching for, a little bit over 30 years now, I haven't arrived. I'm still evolving, trying to get better, trying to grow in my journey as a preacher, but I have learned some things over the years. That question of preparation is always a challenging question for me because, quite honestly, everything is sermon prep. I'm thinking now especially of Charles Spurgeon, who used to carry with him little scraps of paper and would stop at random moments because an illustration came to mind, or he saw something out in the field or in a garden or out in the street, and he just kind of wanted to write that down and capture it. Every time I sit down to read a book or watch a movie or the experiences that I've had, everything in that sense is sermon prep. I just think looking at life and my own experiences and so on and so forth, that's a part of sermon prep. So yes, I'll pull you in kind of to the week-to-week experience and how I approach it, but I just want to encourage you that everything you do is really preparation for the sermon. Whenever I sit down and I engage kind of mentors and people who I really respect from a preaching standpoint, there's a standard list of questions that I ask them. And what's amazing is just you ask enough of these same questions to different people and you start to see some themes that emerge. One of the kind of irreducible minimums among people who do really well at the craft of preaching is they consume a lot of content. Now, I just want to stop right there, and I want you to hear kind of the particular language that I use. It's not just that they read a lot, but I'm saying that they consume a lot of content. One of the joys of living in the 21st century is there's all kinds of ways we can ingest content. And so you may not be a reader, but there's Audible and there's podcasts you can listen to. Great preachers just are constantly intaking and ingesting a lot of content. The thing I want to encourage you with is, however you get your content, is to figure out a way to catalog and maximize kind of that intake of content. For me, what I do, I'm old school. I read and I like physical books. And so what I do whenever I read a book, I always go to that kind of first page. It's blank. And as I'm reading along in that book, I might see page 89. That's a good quote or a good illustration on prayer. And so I'll go to that front page and I'll just go page 89, good quote, good illustration on prayer. And then sometime later, as I'm preaching on prayer, I don't have a photographic memory, but I will remember, hey, I think in that book I read something about prayer, and I'll go to that front page, and that's exactly where it is. I guess the point that I'm trying to make to you is, who cares if you intake a lot of content if you don't have a catalog to actually maximize that content? And so I want to encourage you to do that. Now let me just kind of walk you through the week as I sit down and prepare a message. And I want you to understand that there's always two big buckets in which I try to approach sermon preparation. One big bucket is what I call the content bucket. And that has to do with what am I going to say? What does this passage mean? The second big bucket, which I think is really important, and unfortunately a lot of preachers underestimate it, is the communication bucket. Content, what am I going to say? Communication, how am I going to say it? I don't care how good your exegesis is. And please, I'm not diminishing proper exegesis. If you don't put thought into how you're going to communicate that, then you can mess up really sound exegesis just because it was unclear or it fell flat or it was uninspiring. I was preaching not too long ago and had an 11-year-old girl approach me with her mother. And the 11-year-old girl was shy to actually speak to me. And her mother said, listen, I just want you to know my daughter wanted me to communicate to you that she got it and that she really loved your message. I'm going, that's exactly what I want. I think one of our goals as preachers is we want to be simple, not shallow. simple, not shallow. And that is an art. And so we've got to make sure that we're communicating in such a way in which we're taking the rich depth of the scriptures and communicating it in a manner that is simple, that people can grab hold of it, and that is inspiring. So with these two big buckets in mind, I'm not the type person who can sit down in my own wiring and just kind of prepare all in one shot. Some of you all are gifted that way, and I think so much of these kinds of conversations is knowing who you are, how you're wired, and playing to that strength. For me, it's a little bit by little bit. I could never pull an all-nighter when I was in school and do well on the test. I'm a slow learner. So day one for me is observation, just me and my Bible. I'm just kind of engaging with the text, taking notes. I try to come up with a minimum of 25 observations. Day two for me is exegesis. This is where I'm diving into my word studies, chasing theological themes, haven't really touched commentaries or whatever. Day three is my commentary work. And really, when I approach commentaries, I just kind of approach them from the perspective not so much to glean new insights, although oftentimes I do, but to make sure I'm in the ballpark among trusted scholars as it relates to my exegetical conclusions. Day four is my toughest day. It's the outline day. That's the day in which I am trying to really wrestle with pulling together all of my research, all of my reading, and putting together some kind of outline in which I'm going to be able to communicate clearly the deep vastness and depths of that text. So now we're getting into the communication bucket. How am I going to say these things? I try to communicate my points in applicational terms. I want to make that connection with people and with individuals. And then finally, day five for me, I write out the sermon word for word. That typically means 10-point font, space and a half, 5 pages will get me a 25 to 55-minute sermon, somewhere in that range. I don't write it out to memorize it. I write it out to internalize it. I want to be so familiar with my message that I'm free to follow the wind of the Spirit in the preaching moment. I'll then read it about 5 times, pray a lot all throughout the week, stand up, trust God, and be open for the Spirit of God to move, guide, and direct me. That's a little bit about my approach. I hope this has been a bit of an encouragement to you.